Hey, how you guys doing today? I'm going to welcome you all to another episode of the Counterports Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Everett Stevenson.
Hello, guys. Hello, guys. My name is Malik Foster. I'm another co-host for the Counterports Podcast.
Hey, everybody, and I am Samantha Adams. I'm the third co-host. And today we always have a good topic. We say that every week, but this week is no different. So we are going to be talking about the situation with regards to Tua Tagovailoa. I always say his name wrong, but Tua Tagovailoa. Did I say it right this time, guys?
Yeah, Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about the situation as it relates to him and him being injured in 2 games back to back, and how quickly they allowed him to come back and the kind of harm that could have done to that may have been done to him. Because the second time he got injured in the second game, he got pulled off on a stretcher. So, we wanted to go ahead and dive into that and the responsibility of the NFL and his team. And we're going to contrast that with some other things. So we're just going to go ahead and dive right in, right? So the situation is, and I want you guys to correct me where I'm wrong. He plays for the Dolphins. He's a quarterback. He got tackled. It was a normal sack, right? At least it appeared to be normal, right? And when he got hit, he hit his head. And because he landed flat on his back, and he got up. It was no disconcerting amount of time when he got up, but when he got up, he then collapsed twice, and he got back up. And they essentially said that they didn't say he had been concussed, but to just about everybody, it was clear that was what was going on. And what happened was he was out for only a few days, and he came right back to play and got hurt again. And when he got hurt again, they had to carry him off on a stretcher, and it was not a good look at all. So, that's just the background of what happened with him. And we'll dive a little deeper into what's been going on as it relates to the subsequent ramifications that's taken place since then.
Yeah, I do. I was going to just add on to the background. So Tua, he and the team, the Miami Dolphins, said it was a back injury and an ankle injury. Although clearly, when you watch the game against the Bills that he played, where the initial injury happened, he grabbed his head when he got up. So someone that hurts their back and ankle, your first instinct is to try to grab the area where the pain is. That's generally how people react to injuries. They don't grab a different area unless, there's some sort of concussion symptoms, but that's generally not what happens, right? So that's what everybody has been saying. I definitely agree with that as well. And then they actually put him back in that same game. It's not like they took him out of that game and then they played him 4 days later on this past Thursday, night game against the Cincinnati Bengals, right? So they put him back in, and he got slammed onto the ground pretty hard, and he froze up. We were worried about if he was going to have be paralyzed or some other even severe damage. Right now, it seems to be okay, but definitely a very scary moment, a scary sight. So I just wanted to add a little bit more on the background of how the injury happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one other thing to discuss with that injury that we noticed was upon hitting the ground with the second injury, his fingers kind of formed, they kind of had a rear, I don't know how you want to say it, but it just kind of stuck out where they kind of, were
Propped up.
Thank you, propped up, or stiff, and you kind of seen that it wasn't a natural reaction. It was almost he hit the ground, and then you just seeing the nerves of his body just kind of froze into this certain type of area. So it was a very discerning sight to see, and one in which we all seen like a little bit of commentary, and we've been looking at things that's been going on. The question, was this the organization's issue? From the league on down to the actual team. And then also we have to leave a little bit of accountability, not a little bit, we also have to leave some accountability to Tua as well on did he rush himself into getting in there? And I think these are all questions that we want to look to answer on this week's episode so that we can kind of discuss, what's going on and who's all accountable for those things. And so I know we can start with also looking at the NFL and looking at its history with dealing with concussions. Within a few years ago, they recently released a concussion protocol, which required for players to come out the game if, they received a concussion and stay out the game for that whole game, for them to go through certain treatments and evaluations. In addition to that, they should be held out an additional week after the game. And we know the NFL is also like a sport in which, we call it one of the next man up type of sports where, if you're not there, it's just like, what can you do for me lately? And so if you're not there and you're not performing, a lot of times, the organization might look to move forward. You may lose your opportunity as a star, especially someone. And I think with Tua, this situation is a little bit different because while he is the franchise player, he's been there for about 2 years or so. So this third year was going to be like a real defining statement. It was almost going to be like, if you don't produce with this and we give you a new piece with the wide receiver there, if you don't produce with the tools that we're providing you with, they may be looking to move forward and not have him there. So I feel like in his mind, this is like a breakthrough type of season. And so in his mind, like this is like a breakthrough type of season. So I think, that also adds a little bit of factors into why he would want to try to come back and produce and to show that he's the guy for this job and that he can make things happen. And he was having a pretty good season prior to this.
Yeah. I was going to say, you make some good points, right? About, Tua's incentives, right? It's the contract situation because, of course, these quarterbacks are getting paid more. So he has incentive to go ball out. But even in Tua's case, there has been concerns about injury, right? That's been one of the major concerns. And we know if players have injury history or injury prone, there's going to be clauses in your contract or even outside the clauses to stay healthy and play a certain amount of games. That can cost you money because they're looking at any way to shortchange you. Like we could even look at Lamar Jackson's situation. Like just the potential of him getting injured, the way his style of play is, or, even if he suffered an injury and missed a few games last year, he's still like hesitant to pay him. So that's one aspect. And another aspect of Tua wanting to come in there is the brotherhood, the camaraderie, not letting your brothers down, because that's a big thing that a lot of players will say, like, besides contract, there's that brotherhood. You don't want to let your team down, your family down. When you're a starting player on the football team, right? Some players are different. Some players will say, hey, I need to make sure I'm healthy, make sure I'm fully at percent to give it my best. I'm not going out there until I know I can play at the level I'm accustomed to playing at. But in Tua's case, they were looking to get rid of him. They're talking about, hey, you should trade for another quarterback. Hey, they were, I know this is kind of getting a little later into some stuff, but they were even looking at to try to get Tom Brady at one time, right? When Tom Brady was looking at other teams and ready to leave New England as a free agent. So they even got caught tampering with that. But we'll get into the show a little bit later on, some of the bad acting on the Dolphins side of things. But I just wanted to say a little bit of that part with Tua.
Yeah, I do think as it relates to what happened with him, that the Dolphins definitely has to be accountable to some degree. So, they have different doctors, different people on their staff that help the players, right? And typically, even if a player wants to play, it's really up to the team to determine or establish whether or not they're allowed to come back out. And first he came back out right away, and then they had him playing a few days later. And I think that's all irresponsible on part of the Dolphins. They have enough money to ensure the health of the people that put their bodies and lives on the line for the sake of the game. And I know it might sound a little drastic to say that they're putting their life on the line, but they are, right? Like if you get hurt, it could really, you could really get hurt. Like you could have been paralyzed. There's a lot of things that could have happened. And that goes without saying, especially after, he just described what he looked like when he hit that ground the second time, and to have that type of responsibility, you can't take it for granted because it's a very high responsibility. And sometimes players don't necessarily recognize that, and you can't just keep pushing forward without making sure that player is okay. You have that responsibility and duty. And even if it is that he's willing to do it, it doesn't mean that it should happen. And so I think that, the Dolphins need to be held accountable for that because of the fact that they allowed for him to come out. Think about how often we see players that can't play because they're hurt, even if they're ready. You know what I'm saying? Or they think they're ready or they want to play. And that happens not just in the NFL, it happens in different teams in different sports. I mean, although we're focusing on the NFL today, typically speaking, when somebody gets hurt, they're not going to play unless they can play through the pain. And even then, sometimes it's about, you're wondering whether or not they should even be on the field or on the court or whatever. So I think looking at the responsibility of the Dolphins based on that response, by allowing him to come back out and play, they really need to reevaluate that, right? Because that's he could have died. Because you imagine you got children watching, he could have died. So, while naysayers get an attitude about Beyonce or how she danced at the Super Bowl, or the fact that Janet Jackson pretty much got flashed, or whatever that controversy was at the Super Bowl years and years ago, this man could have really been harmed. And I think that it's something that they really need to take into account when they're considering whether or not to put somebody back out on the field.
Yeah. I think also, I'm sorry, Malik, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say? Go ahead, E.
Oh, I also wanted to say, I think we should also make mention of the fact that outside of the organization, that part of the protocol of the NFL is to have a third-party, affiliated doctor with the team to evaluate individuals who are within the protocol. And I think as we've seen recently in news that individual was released from his duties because of, whatever is believed to happen as this with the injuries that Tua suffered in this second game. And I think another thing that was very interesting that we had to talk about too when we look at the Dolphins and their accountability was the fact that, again, they played on a Sunday and allegedly he got hurt, came back into the game and played. Then it played 5 days later on Thursday night, and then the injury occurs again, which now, we definitely believe that he may be out for a little more of an extended time frame. They haven't released when he may be able to return. But that's where I feel like, we have to look at the team and say that their level of accountability needs to be in there, because it's like, hey, you guys had a short week. You know what I'm saying? You've seen this guy has an injury. You rushed him in front of a few specialists. And then, the specialists, of course, even if they are to be, non-associated or non-affiliated with the team, they still have incentives to try to give the team favorable, reactions. They want to keep their job. They want to, remain favorable with the NFL. And they understand that, again, they need their stars to be out there playing. So in order for those things to happen, maybe, you overlook a thing or two, unfortunately, or you let some things slide in order for it to go forward. And I think that's the case that we see in this with this example.
Yeah, I was going to mention a little bit to piggyback off of you, about the incentive, right? This is where what could lead to malpractice, right? Like generally, maybe he would have made a different diagnosis if it was just, not the star quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, right? Or if he wasn't working for the NFL, if it wasn't such a high possible financial incentive, prestigious position, like, hey, I'm a doctor for, NFL team or the NFL, right? So both the doctors, because it's supposed to be the team doctor that evaluates for concussion protocols, and then there's supposed to be the independent person that you evaluate as part of concussion protocols, the CTE protocol, like to help kind of limit this and protect the players from themselves, right? Because we already know that this is a full contact sport. People are going to suffer these type of injuries, especially head injuries. We know that the helmets aren't enough, but that's why they changed some of the rules for the kickoffs, and they've done the research to know some of the studies and some of the instances within the game that increase the likelihood of these head injuries. But you can't fully get rid of it unless you're going to play flag football. So that's something that everybody has to live with. But when a player does suffer an injury, you do want to protect them from himself. And if they're displaying some new symptom, any type of head like injury or symptoms, they probably should have took him out the game to be on the safe side. And I think that's what led to the firing of the independent doctor, because he didn't properly do his job. And so they just got rid of him right away. And plus, it's a high profile situation because that was a nationally televised game as well. And now the NFL is receiving a lot of heat for stuff. But another thing I was going to say as far as the malpractice point is that the Dolphins are bad actors, and they're known to do bad stuff. Like what Brian Flores was saying, this gives more credibility to what he was saying, that the Dolphins wanted him to tank, lose games on purpose so he could get higher draft compensation. They didn't want him to do anything, like do things the right way as far as handling players and all kinds of stuff like that. So the allegations Brian Flores made, this kind of gives more credibility to that. And they also got caught even tampering, which means basically trying to get another player on your team and talking to another player outside the NFL's legal tampering period, when you're trying to court another player to come to your team. So the Dolphins have been caught doing a lot of things, or alleged to have done a lot of things. So they seem to be bad actors here. But I mean, in this case, it's just speculation, but it's looking really bad. It looks like possible malpractice was taking place. Who knows if this person was incentivized or paid or something. We can't look past that as well. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and I also think just on another level, like when you look at it from the standpoint of the simple fact of the matter that, generally the quarterback is considered to be like the franchise player. That might be like in words of might be like corporate America, that's like your GM, or you know what I'm saying? That's the guy that's really like hands-on, like your COO, if you will. He's going to lead the troops. He's going to go out there and kind of, build the rapport for your team. So you will believe that this is generally someone that you will want to protect, because this is the person that you have, your main franchise is kind of built on their shoulders.
Yeah, that's true, man. The Dolphins, they were undefeated. They went to it in the game. So, I mean,
right. But it's almost like, would you be willing to like let something slide in order for you to keep, the ability to keep him having the ability to be able to, you know what I'm saying, win you future games?
Because the player is going to probably lie and say I'm good, So it's up to the doctors to be that unbiased person to, make that call. Like, nope, you can't come back into this game. We're going to evaluate you next week after Sunday to see if you can even play the next week.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, when doctors take an oath, the Hippocratic oath, and it's to do no harm, right? That's part of it. And so they're supposed to help people, not just push things along for the sake of the dollar. And I think that it's important to recognize that when you're talking about malpractice, you're talking about whether or not they had a duty, whether or not they upheld that duty, or what they did that went against it, right? What kind of harm did it cause? What kind of damages, which is a legal term, did it create? And when you look at what happened with him, that doctor was fired. We don't know that doctor's name. We don't know why we don't know that doctor's name. We don't know if that name is going to come out. It's kind of like, the topic that we just talked about earlier this week with the Ime Udoka situation, pardon Chino, y'all, where they're not releasing certain people's names. I think in part, they're protecting people simply because of the cancel culture and how cancel culture will really, stop a person from being able to get a job and all that other stuff. But at the same time, things like this, when you're putting people's lives in danger, it should not go without consequence. Like, you have to be careful. Now, it's one thing if, there was a mistake made as it relates to reading a chart or something like that. Although that's a huge mistake, that's one thing. But the thing is, they're constantly taking players and, giving them medicine in the back and then sending them back out to go continue to play. But the difference with this situation is that man was clearly hurt. Like you said, he grabbed his head. It's like all the evidence is there. He grabbed his head. He fell down a couple times. Then you have him come right back into the game a few minutes later. Then he gets hurt again. And now look, he's like damn near seized up. I don't know if he was having a seizure or what was going on, but because we couldn't see him with the helmet on, but that there's definitely a problem there. And like you said, Malik, it's on the world stage. It's on television. Everybody's watching. It's like on regular television too. We're not talking like, pay-per-view or something where you got to pay for it. It's literally, and even then that's still not, good.
Yeah, it was on Amazon, and we know a lot of people have Amazon. It's basically nationally televised. It's not, but it basically is nationally televised.
Right. And so I just think it's important to recognize when you have a duty, you have that responsibility to your patients. Just like us as attorneys, we have responsibilities to our clients. There's rules in place. And, when you're talking about the malpractice of it all, you have to be mindful of that. The NFL has put in place CTE protocol, right? The concussion protocols, which don't allow for players to be able to play for at least 2 weeks after being concussed. And so I understand the fact that Tua may have had concerns about his contract moving forward, but what good is a contract if you are paralyzed? What good is a football NFL contract if you're unable to play because you died? You know what I'm saying? Or you had some sort of brain damage due to you just continuing to push. Sometimes it's okay to have a seat. You see what I'm saying? And I think that people have to recognize, especially people, I get it. There's a lot of money at stake, right? I get it. Your career and everything that you know and love is at stake. But you can't put your life in front. You can't put the game in front of your life, because you're no good to anybody if you are handicapped or brain damaged or anything like that. And the CTE, for those who don't know, comes from being concussed. And it's not like for some people can develop CTE after having a severe concussion. Sometimes people can get CTE after being concussed multiple times, and it has long-term effects. For example, right, when we look at Aaron Hernandez was convicted of killing a person, and he was about to be on trial, I think he had a pending trial for killing another person. And then there was some other cloud around him about whether or not he was involved in some other stuff. So while he's in prison, he killed himself. When they did his autopsy, they said he had CTE. He had one of the most severe cases of CTE the NFL had seen. And that stems from playing ball from college. And they believe that he probably got it from back then. There's so many other players, right? And so the protocol is put in place for a purpose. And these doctors have got to recognize it's not about money. It's about making sure that these people are okay. Because when they leave the NFL, they don't like disappear into thin air. They still have lives to live. There are many other players that Antonio Brown, for example, right? The question is whether or not he has CTE because of his behavior. Like just the other day, he was in some hot tub in some gym or something, butt naked, recorded.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Butt in the air, he's doing all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And the question is what is his mental health looking like, right? And if his mental health,
I want to join on that topic too, though, Sam, because
let me just finish what I'm saying. If his mental health is at risk or is he has a problem, then he needs help. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that proper protocol and making sure whether or not he has CTE, they need to make sure that these players are taken care of even after they leave the league, no matter if they quit or they're fired or they just retire, whatever it is, they need to protect these people because they're still people with families. So go ahead, E.
Yeah, I was going to say to that point that you just made that there's a couple things, a couple of factors that we have to look at too, right? Because you mentioned the two things. I think it was the player, like the player's desire, and in particular with that is, like you said, it's tough because, the mantra in football in general is that, you need to, be tough. There's always like a quote, like, are you hurt or are you injured? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you could play through hurt, but injury is another story, right? Like, if you're injured, then, we're going to have to give you a chance to sit you down. But if you're hurt, you can kind of play through the pain. So there's that mantra that kind of goes through in the league as well. And then we also have, in addition to that, players who, like we said, within Tua's situation, who have different factors that's in place. You know what I'm saying? If you may be in your first year as a franchise quarterback that's getting led, they may be sitting you, or sometimes you might get out there, you're actually starting, and that they're going to protect you because they know that you're the future. Whereas if you're a guy who's on the brink, you know what I'm saying? Who knows? This might be your last time to try to get that big time contract that can change your family's life. So I think a lot of times when we talk about that, players have to look and say to themselves, like, am I willing to put my life on the line for this game? And I can almost guarantee you most guys are willing to say yes. Like, I'm willing to, like, you know what I'm saying? If it all's said and done, I'm willing to die on this field for it because I love the game that much, because I love the opportunities that it can present to me. And I think that's the mindset. So when we talk about that, the factors of the players and their willingness to go back into the game, it's almost like regardless of what a doctor may say, even if they told them, hey man, you have these situations on board here, and this is looking like this, and the third, a player might act like they don't hear that and still be willing to go out. I'm not saying that this is the case with this person, but we just saw recently a report that stated that JJ Watt was willing to come out and play, and they said he had to have like his heart shocked into place so that it could, so that it could beat to the right rhythm. You know what I mean? So, and that's the heart. That's the most vital organ that you have in order to keeping yourself alive. So, guys are willing to put their life on the line a lot. And then, sometimes you can say, well, is it for the money? Because, JJ Watt's been in the league for a while. You can't say at this point he's doing it for the money because he has enough money to walk away from the game. But then it becomes the love of the game, right? It's like, what else would I be doing with my life that I'll have this much fun doing? You know what I mean? And I think that's another factor that comes into it. So it's like once you actually make it, you might have done so many things to make it that the love of the game just becomes more deeper for that. I think that's one of the reasons why, and I want to talk about the love of the game, we see some people have speculation as to the situation with Tom and his personal affairs because he continues to come back and play the game, even though he has all the money. He can sit back, he could chill. He has a wife. He has a wife that makes good money as well. You know what I'm saying? He could fall back.
Mark did too.
I'm sorry. Yeah, correct. They could fall back, but it's just like the game is just, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like when a quote from one of my favorite movies, but and Money Making Mitch say, you know, what else I'm gonna do? You know what I'm saying? I love the game, love the hustle. You know what I'm saying? Like you feeling like one of them ball players when he out there. You know what I'm saying? So it's, you know, I think that's another element that goes into this thing is the element of the hustle and the understanding of like, you know, you've been playing this game at this point. When they get to that age, they've been playing it close to what, 20 years? You know what I'm saying? From Pee-wee to, you know, middle school to high school to college and then there. So that game has been engraved in them just about as long as, you know, and even further than education at that point. So, you know what I'm saying? It's been a part of their life, a part of their identity. So I think that's another factor that goes into it. But I think also when you talked about other players who may suffer from CTE or symptoms of CTE, you know, I'll listen to an interview that Warren Sapp did, and he talked about having a memory loss at sometimes. And he believes that that may be because of, you know, potential concussions that he have had in the past, and how that could have affected him in his living days to him not necessarily having, you know what I'm saying, the motor skills to remember certain things. I think also we could talk about one of the first people that we saw who with the CTE conversation came about, which was Junior Seau. And he, I guess his pain and his injury drove him to kill himself, which is another situation that happened in the Aaron Hernandez situation. He killed himself, I believe, in jail. So guys can take on lasting effects from these injuries in the game that could, you know what I'm saying, affect them long after their playing days.
But that kind of, what you're talking about now kind of goes into some of the retirement benefits. Right. I know there's a big issue going on with some of that right now, retirement benefits as far as the lasting effects of the CTE. But in this case,
but not even just the benefits of it, because
we're talking about more preventative measures, like how to prevent.
Right, correct.
I don't think you can fully prevent it in a full contact sport, but you can protect the player if you see it. And this was like a apparent, obvious thing that everybody was talking about, and the Dolphins and the NFL just basically just let it go, but mainly the Dolphins, right? How did you let your player go back out like that? And then how did the independent doctor who works for the NFL do that? So those are some of the issues.
No, I agree. I definitely
right. But I mean,
but I just wanted to go into the detail of when you don't, you know what I'm saying, prevent these injuries, how damaging are they for a person who could have a lot of things going on in their life, have a lot of positive things that's still going on in their life, for them still to feel the need to want to take their own life. You know what I'm saying? That has to be crippling.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, one of the things that I was going to say was to lead into to kind of tie it all together. Like, yeah, there has to be both. It can't just be preventative measures or protective measures post, you know, employment, I guess. They have to do both, because the thing about it is sometimes some of these guys don't have symptoms until way later. Like, look at Junior Seau. For all we know, we didn't know he had any symptoms. You know, even Aaron Hernandez. The thing about Aaron Hernandez is that if he hadn't been arrested and convicted and sent to prison, he would have still been playing. He would have been actively playing. And we don't know what type of effect, because they said that he had one of the worst cases of CTE they had seen. So we don't know what type of effects that would have had on him during the next couple seasons, right? Because it was like 2 seasons. He got arrested during the course of 1 season. Then they went to the Super Bowl, won. You know what I'm saying? Like there was a lot of things going on. And so I think that it's important to recognize that some of the things that they need to do is make sure that these players are effectively protected while they're playing to prevent things from getting as bad as they have, give them some sort of benefits, no matter if, however they leave, right? Because you can't just leave somebody hanging like that. And these doctors have to be honest with these players and with the teams about the status of these people, because they are, like I said before, they're people, they have families, and there's a lot of people and a lot of things at stake when they don't make their money. So they have to have contingencies in their contracts, right? That's why it's important for them to get lawyers and make sure somebody is there to protect them in these contract negotiations. I think that some of the other things that they can do, aside from that, and the league can implement those rules. They can require them for every team. I think that maybe if they don't do what they're supposed to, and these people really get hurt, they should be able to be liable, whether it be criminally or civilly, but they should be able to be held liable for creating, there's a whole argument of assuming the risk, but not at the expense of doctors not being honest. Like you can't actually assume a risk if you're not wholeheartedly knowledgeable about what that risk is. You know what I'm saying? So I think that making sure that they're honest, if they assume the risk in these doctors and these teams.
Are you talking about like before they even enter, let's say the NFL, they go through like all the risk and all of that stuff? Like,
no, I'm talking about when, for example, Tua got, it's clear. Like they can say that it was his ankle and his back all they want to. Nobody's buying it. He fell down. When he got hit, he grabbed his head, collapsed twice. When he went in the back, those doctors should have told him, these are the risks, period. And if he went ahead and went out, first of all,
but Sam, that's why they got the independent doctors in the first place.
This is what I'm saying to you. If he goes against the doctors, then at that point it's up to the team to say yes or no.
But see, you don't want it to be the team, because the Dolphins, as I was saying earlier, they've been doing bad actors, and this is
what I'm saying.
So create somebody in that organization that's going to overrule the ownership and the executive.
Ooh. And guess what? When that happens and something bad happens to that man, he can sue, or his family can. They can be held criminally not liable.
But that's why you're supposed to give that authority to the medical team, and that's why they're supposed to hire.
But what I'm doing is I'm offering solutions to help prevent these types of things from happening. When people don't believe, when people move a particular way when they believe they're without consequence. So if the teams believe that, okay, we can't get sued, we can't go to jail, we can't do any of that, they're going to continue to push. But if you know that that's a possibility, you're going to think twice before you're like, okay, go ahead and go back into the game. You see what I'm saying? Especially when, first of all, the doctors, the team doctor, the third party doctor, the team is supposed to listen to the doctors. If the team and the doctors say that he can't go out, then he can't go out. If the doctors say he can't go out and the team allows him to go out anyway,
the doctors should have the final say.
I agree with that.
They're the experts.
They're not, right. But if the doctor is not doing what they're supposed to do, they should be held liable. You see what I'm saying? That way, it's not, because what I'm saying is not one person needs to be held liable. I think
because that's the malpractice at that point.
Right. It's malpractice, and it's also negligence on behalf of the team. And, he's not in the mental state to completely disregard the orders of the doctor, especially if we're talking about head injuries. We don't know how brain damaged he could potentially be. Right. And so that's the reason why I say those things, they should be able to be held liable, whether it's criminally or civilly, if they're not taking care of their
That's
players.
how ball players are. They're not gonna be able to make those decisions because they're gonna want to play. Even when I played sports, I didn't like if I had a little injury, I didn't want to come out. Like everybody.
I understand that. All three of us were athletes, right? Because I was also an athlete. You want to go ahead and keep pushing. You don't want to let your team down. You want to go ahead. You want to win. You want to do whatever you can do to contribute, right? But at the end of the day, somebody has to be held responsible before it becomes a worse situation. Like this was bad, right? And you've seen throughout history, the history of football, about how people are harmed when they become concussed and how things could have been prevented or could have been helped. And if you're not doing anything to create a better atmosphere for that, it's going to continue to happen. And it's going to happen to a point where it's going to have a huge detriment on somebody. And at some point, somebody is going to have to be held responsible. And the thing is, it's better to do it early than to do it late when something really, 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 really bad happens. Not to say that the things that have happened haven't already been really, really bad, because not for nothing, Junior Seau was dead. Aaron Hernandez is dead. And then whoever, not whoever, but the people that Aaron Hernandez has been alleged to have murdered. You know what I'm saying? The people that have been abused, have been in abusive relationships with NFL players because they have been concussed to a point of,
But in this particular situation, Sam, I think everybody, in terms of the blame, I think everybody's culpable here.
I agree.
Of course, a player is going to automatically, no matter what, they're usually 99% of the time or 90% of the time, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be like, I want to go in the game regardless of the injury. Most players are like that. But as far as outside the own player themselves, if he's concussed, he's probably not going to be in the right mental state to make the right decision anyways. So he might not be lucid at the time. So
right.
You may need to have that independent doctor and expert make that decision. And if they make the wrong decision, like you say, or commit malpractice, and it rises to the level of malpractice, that's where the fault of, the doctor and then, the team comes into play.
Right. And that's essentially what I'm saying. The blame is to go around to everyone. It's not to one particular person. But somebody or somebodies needs to be liable for it.
No, I agree. I think me personally, when we look at solutions for this situation, I agree. I think that there needs to definitely be some level of additional accountability for improper diagnosis or withholding truthfulness from individuals in particular when it comes to players and concussions, because of, like you said, the lasting effects, and whether that's from not only just those third party doctors, but as well as the team doctors, because and we get it, like you said, it's going to be hard for the team doctor to not have the interests of the team in mind, as that's their employer, not necessarily the players per se. It's the team. So, as we know, as attorneys and things, your duty or loyalty lies with the organization and not necessarily the employee when, you're a corporate attorney or something like that. So I would imagine it's the same type of mindset with the doctor. You're a team doctor. Your duty or loyalty is to the team, not the player. And that kind of can create a contrast when you have, players that are in need of things from their doctor. So I do think that accountability on both, the doctors as well as the team, whether it may be, fines, them having to necessarily take on certain responsibilities to those players in the event of a catastrophic injury, season career-ending injury, or a significant injury to a permanent brain damage and loss like that, of a significant level, that they are held accountable in that regard. So that's my final thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say real quickly as far as this situation goes. I think the NFL tried to, do something, but they were too slow. Like they knew something was up. They decided to launch an investigation, but the issue was Tua he had another game coming up on Thursday. The team probably traveled like Wednesday to Cincinnati, so it was a quick turnaround. So everything came so fast. So I'm not sure. I mean, though, I would say if the NFL the best thing I think they could have did was just shut it down. Say, hey, we're going to launch this investigation. It looks like there's some foul play here. Tua can't play Thursday. That's just it. And if we find out y'all is telling the truth or everything's good with the back and ankle injury, like y'all said it was, and it was just those injuries, fine. He can come back next week. But this week, shut it down. That's the only thing I think they could have really did. But then the Dolphins, like say if they were telling the truth, everything is right, then that could have possibly cost Dolphins a game, and then they'll be upset. But at least safety first, right? So I think it's better to be safe than sorry. I know the Dolphins would be crying boo-hoo if they lost the game, which they end up losing, and Tua end up getting hurt. So everything went bad that this past Thursday. I think that's like the only thing they could do. But as possible solutions, they are changing the rules to where a player displays like those obvious symptoms, they automatically are out of the game. They can't come back in, even with the protocols in place, the new protocols in place. So I think that's a good move. And I just think maybe more punishments to the teams if they allow such a thing to happen. Because at the end of the day, they did have a team doctor there, and the team doctor cleared them, not just an independent doctor. So I think the Dolphins deserve some punishment as well.
Yeah, and I don't think a fine is going to be enough. And I know that might sound kind of harsh, but at the end of the day, that man's life was put on the line, and so for the sake of the game, and so I think that the responsibility definitely belongs amongst multiple parties, and I think that it's unfortunate because, like we all said, like Tua wasn't in the position to say, "Oh yeah, I'm good." You don't know you're good. You know what I'm saying? And even if you do know you're not good, you're not going to say that you aren't. You know how jammed up you got to be as an athlete to be like, nah, I'm not going to go. Like, look at basketball. You got basketball players playing. They have surgery, knees still in recovery, knees all messed up, ankles messed up, back, elbows, whole nine. I remember one time Allen Iverson played. He had like a bunch of injuries, and he was still going. And so I think – they put their bodies on the line, and they put for the sake of money and entertainment, right? Whether it be in that order, and fame, right? I don't know if it's going to be in whatever order, but those are the top three reasons. And then also too, because they love the game. And so, I think it's important to recognize that, somebody has to stand in the gap to protect them. And it's not going to be just a matter of, okay, let's all just go with it. No. And it has to be, whether it be the league, whether it be lawyers, whether somebody does. And so, those are my final thoughts. It's good that they have the CTE protocol, but they got to do more. And so with that, I'm going to turn it on over to E so he can go ahead and do his thing.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just go ahead and start off with our motivational quote of the week. And these are a few quotes that I kind of feel like align with the topic that we have going on this week, which is a quote from John Stott, which states that the chief occupational hazard of leadership is pride. And I felt that this quote was fitting in this situation is because one of the things that you look at when you talk about the quarterback, when you talk about the quarterback is he's the leader of the team. As I stated earlier, he's like the COO, if you will, of an organization. He's the leader of the team. And within that, there's a certain level of pride that comes. And so, of course, while he could, have been cleared, there is an element to it to say, like, hey, well, if you know that you're not really all the way, and again, how does he know he's not medically trained? So it's not like he can just tell. He may feel normal, things might feel good to him, so he might honestly have felt like it was good to go. and therefore that pride allowed him to go. But I think this is also fitting towards the organization as well. For those individuals, that doctor who may have, took the test and got the information, the other doctor who may have taken tests on the organization that done it, those guys and their pride and their leadership, was an occupational hazard to, the chief of the team. Another one that I liked as well, it says optimism is an occupational hazard of programming. Feedback is a treatment. And I thought that would be, also be fitting in this situation where, again, Tua may be optimistic of kind of coming back to the team, but, and again, the programming of being an athlete, playing through injuries, and all of those things, leading your team on, facing danger and hurt, and just, overcoming through those things. And then we also have the feedback of it is the treatment. And that's where we feel like those doctors are supposed to step in place and they kind of provide that feedback and provide that, hey, you need to slow down in this situation. We need you to kind of, get everything going, or we need you into your best ability. So, right now, while, you may feel normal, there's still some room for improvement. So that is some of our quotes. One of the the Black Book of the Month, the book of the month rather, is from the author Tanashi Coates. And the book is Between the World and Me. And it is a book that was written in the perspective of a father writing a story to his son. And it's kind of just giving him examples of things that he was going through as an American, as a Black male, and some of the experiences that he wants his son to necessarily learn from, so that he wouldn't necessarily have to subject themselves to the same type of injuries, or not necessarily injuries, but the same type of harms. So these were ways for him to kind of share those lessons and spread those words. And I think as we all read those stories, we were able to learn that, hey, we're all able to learn what ways in which, Black men have been treated in this world. So that's a good book that we're going to promote for the book of the month. And then again, for the Black business of the month, one I said earlier was near and dear to my heart. We wanted to promote the Hungry Black Man, which is a Instagram page and website where there's a gentleman who goes around tasting, different culinary restaurants that's Black owned, and he promotes them on Instagram and also his website. The Instagram page is The Hungry Black Man. And basically he'll go to different cities in different states as well. And he'll just like post some different restaurants and some of the items on their menu that he finds to be, delicious. So if you're a foodie or anyone like that, you guys can check that one out and find some places that may be local to you, or if not, if you're traveling in these locations, he has some good recommendations for places for you to go. So the Hungry Black Man is our business of the month. And with that being said, we're probably about to get ready to close this thing on out. I want to thank everybody for watching into this far. I hope that you guys found some good information and get some good news. Also want to let you guys know that you can catch us live on Wednesdays on Instagram around 8:30. And then, this will also be posted pretty much every Saturday around 1:00. You can, if you would like to get in contact with us, our social media handles will be posted here a little bit shortly after this. So you can reach out to us on social media with any questions, comments. You can leave them on the page or the video if you want. But if you have some suggested topics, videos, or things that you would like us to comment on, please feel free to go ahead and submit those to us there, or you can send it to us via email at counterpoisepod@gmail.com. And we will greatly appreciate that. If there's anything else you guys want to add?
Be good to one another, though.
All right. Well, with that,
Yeah, not really, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we love y'all for that. See y'all next time.
All right, guys. Peace.
y'all. Peace.